When Sterling first said he wanted to go to New York University, he said it like it was no big deal. Out of state. Private school. One of those names people nod at. I smiled like I wasn't absolutely terrified. Inside, my chest dropped. NYU wasn't just far away. It was expensive in a way that didn't care how hard you worked. But I nodded. Yeah, I said softly. That's a great school. That night, after he went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a calculator and a mug of tea. The tea went cold. The numbers didn't make sense. Tuition, housing, books, fees I didn't even know existed. I moved numbers around like puzzle pieces, trying to convince myself they'd magically fit. I cut corners that didn't exist yet. I told myself I could work more hours, sleep less, figure it out later. By the time the sun came up, the impossible almost looked possible. When the acceptance letter arrived, Sterling tore it open with shaking hands. I got in, he whispered. His voice cracked. For a second, he didn't move. Like if he breathed too hard, it might disappear. I pulled him into my arms, and I cried. Not quiet tears this time. Big, shaking ones. For the first time in years, I wasn't crying from exhaustion or fear. I was crying from pure joy. That night, after he left to celebrate with friends, I sat back down at the table with my calculator and a stack of bills. The number at the bottom was more than I made in a year. I didn't hesitate. I emptied my savings account. Every dollar I'd protected for decades. Then I took out personal loans. Signed my name without blinking. From that point on, overtime wasn't optional. It was survival. I worked double shifts until my legs went numb. Picked up holidays. Volunteered for weekends. There were mornings I stood in the bathroom, hands braced on the sink, waiting for the dizziness to pass. Some days, standing up felt like climbing a mountain. My body begged me to slow down. I ignored it. Every sunrise I watched through the hospital windows felt like a step closer to his future. Every missed meal, every aching joint, every night I collapsed into bed fully dressed. Worth it. Always worth it. 4 years later, I stood at his graduation. Hundreds of families. Cheers echoing across the field. I was a small figure in the crowd, clapping until my palms burned. When they called his name, he lifted his arms like he'd just won something. I cried again. He didn't see me in the crowd, but that didn't matter. I had kept my promise. And in that moment, I truly believed love always comes back. Then came Isla. I still remember the first time I saw her. High heels clicking against my floor. Perfume so expensive it filled the room in seconds. She smiled, polite but distant, her eyes moving slowly around my apartment. Not rude, not obvious, just assessing. Like she was walking through a thrift store, deciding what was worth keeping and what wasn't. Sterling didn't notice. He looked at her like she was oxygen, like the room didn't exist unless she was in it. I recognized that look. I used to wear it for his father. So I smiled. I welcomed her. I told myself this was what love looked like now. When they got engaged, Isla came over with a vision. Country club by the river. White roses everywhere. A live band. Crystal glasses. Perfect lighting. She spoke like it was already done. Sterling sat beside her, nodding, smiling, already swept up in the dream. I nodded too, but inside, numbers were already running through my head. I knew I couldn't afford any of it. A week later, Sterling stopped by alone. He stood in my kitchen, hands in his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. "We're a little short," he said softly. "Just that.
No guilt.
No pressure. Just expectation.
I didn't ask how much.
I already knew what my answer would be. I cracked open my retirement fund, the one I'd been building since David died. I wrote the check. I told myself it was love. The wedding was beautiful. Chandeliers, music floating through the room, guests laughing like money wasn't real. I stood at the edge of the crowd in my simple dress, holding a glass of champagne I barely touched. I watched my son spin his bride across the floor. He looked happy. That was enough. A few months later, they wanted a house. Not just any house. Hyde Park. 2 stories. Big yard. Marble counters. Perfect for starting a family, Isla said. I warned them it was expensive. Sterling waved it off. It's an investment, he said. We'll manage. The bank didn't agree. They hesitated. So I stepped in. I used the last of David's life insurance for the down payment. Then I co-signed the mortgage. When I signed my name, the pen felt heavier than anything I'd lifted at the hospital. Sterling squeezed my hand. You've always believed in me, he said. I smiled. I didn't say what I felt. That my belief was turning into fear. The house was stunning. Polished floors. High ceilings. Sunlight pouring through massive windows. But every time I visited, I felt smaller. Isla welcomed me with a perfect smile that never reached her eyes. I started bringing pies on Sundays. It became my ritual, my anchor. I helped set the table, watched the kids grow, told stories about their grandfather. At first they laughed. Then they started looking at their mother. Before they laughed, I told myself it was nothing. I told myself this was just change. I told myself, this is love. Sunday dinners became routine. Same time, same house, same table. At first, they were the highlight of my week. I'd arrive early with a homemade pie, still warm, the smell filling the kitchen. The kids would run up to me. Grandma. They'd tug on my coat, begging for stories. I'd tell them about their grandfather, how he dropped a turkey one Thanksgiving, and laughed until he cried. They'd giggle so hard. They could barely breathe. Back then I felt included, but little things started changing.
Slow.
Quiet. When I told a story, the kids would glance at their mom first. Just a quick look. Like they were checking if it was okay to laugh.
Sometimes they did.
Sometimes they didn't. Then came the sighs.
Soft.
Barely noticeable. Sterling would let out a breath through his nose. Isla would shift in her chair. Polite smiles followed. The kind that said, wrap it up. I told myself I was imagining it. That everyone repeats stories. That I was just getting older. One Sunday, I brought something special. An old photo album. The cover was worn. The pages yellowed. But inside were pieces of our lives. David holding baby Sterling. Sterling's first bike. Our tiny apartment in winter. I set it gently on the coffee table. I thought maybe we could look through this together, I said. Isla didn't even look up from her phone. She waved a hand. Nobody wants to see those dusty old things, she said lightly. They're just clutter. Clutter. The word landed hard. My hands froze on the album. Sterling shifted in his seat. For a second I thought he might say something. He didn't. He looked away. That's when I knew. I wasn't family anymore. I was background noise. Something tolerated. Something ignored. I closed the album and held it in my lap, pretending to flip through the pages. The kids were already back on their tablets. The room filled with digital laughter. I sat there quietly, surrounded by people I loved,
who no longer saw me.
That night, as I drove home, the house glowing in my rearview mirror. I realized something painful. Love doesn't disappear all at once. It fades, quietly, until one day, you look around and realize you've already been erased. Thanksgiving night looked perfect. The kind of perfect you see in magazines. Candles lined down the table. Soft light flickering against polished wood. Music played low in the background. Warm, smooth, harmless. The turkey sat in the center, carved just right. Rosemary, butter, steam rising. Everything looked like success. I sat at the far end of the table, smiling when I was supposed to, nodding when it felt right. I felt like a decoration. Something placed there for balance, not belonging. Isla sat beside Sterling, elegant in a deep burgundy dress, pouring him another glass of wine, without asking. The kids were quiet. Too quiet. Polite in that careful way children get when they sense tension, but don't understand it yet. Conversation drifted around vacations, new jobs, future plans. I chimed in where I could, keeping my voice small. Then the room slowed. That natural pause between topics. The kind that invites memory. I smiled, feeling nostalgic, and said softly, "You know, your grandfather and I once had Thanksgiving with nothing but a burned chicken." I laughed gently, already picturing it. The smoke, the boxed mashed potatoes. How we laughed through it all. I didn't finish the sentence. Sterling didn't look up from his plate. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't hesitate. "Shut up, Mom," he said flatly. "It's boring. Nobody cares." The words landed like glass. The room went dead still. No forks moved. No chairs scrapped. The music felt too loud, all of a sudden. I waited for him to realize what he'd said, for him to look at me. He didn't. He kept cutting his turkey, like nothing had happened. Isla smirked into her wine glass, pretending to hide it behind a sip. The kids stared at their plates, faces flushed, not daring to move. No one defended me. No one corrected him. I set my fork down. The sound of metal on porcelain felt like a gunshot. My hands were shaking, but I folded my napkin neatly. The room kept breathing. Without me. I stood up slowly. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I need some air." No one stopped me. Behind me, the conversation restarted. Soft at first, then normal, like I had never been there. I walked down the hallway, past framed family photos I had helped pay for. The front door closed gently behind me. Outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. I walked to my car, my heels clicking on the stone path. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, watching my breath fog the windshield. In the reflection, I barely recognized myself. Tired eyes, drawn mouth, a woman who had lost her seat at the table she built. The laughter inside the house grew louder, muffled through glass. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a bad moment. It was a revelation. In my son's eyes, I wasn't his mother anymore. I was noise, and noise is easy to silence. I stood up. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I need some air." No one looked at me. No one asked if I was okay. No one followed. I walked down the hallway alone, past the soft glow of family photos, framed in gold. Photos I paid for. Smiles I funded. The front door closed behind me. With a soft click. Outside, the cold wrapped around my skin. Sharp and honest. I crossed the driveway slowly, heels sinking slightly into the stone. When I reached my car, I didn't unlock it right away. I turned back and looked at the house. The house I helped pay for. The house I co-signed for. When the bank hesitated, warm lights glowing inside, laughter spilling through the windows. None of it included me. I sat in the driver's seat and shut the door. The world went quiet, except for the laughter, muffled, distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel and finally let the tears come. Not loud, just slow, tired, the kind of crying that comes after holding it together for decades. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't loved. I was useful. I paid the bills, covered the gaps, made things easier. I smoothed the road so others could run. And when I stopped being needed, I stopped being seen. Usefulness has an expiration date, and mine had passed. I thought about every sacrifice, every night shift, every skipped meal, all of it traded for a seat I no longer had. Inside the house, someone laughed louder. The sound cut deep. I wiped my face and straightened in my seat. Something inside me shifted. Not anger.
Clarity.
For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I just opened my bank app. Names, accounts, balances. I stared at the screen until the numbers stopped feeling abstract. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. I started the engine. As I pulled away from the curb, the house grew smaller in the mirror. The laughter faded, and in the silence that followed, I realized something terrifying and freeing. I had spent my whole life making sure everyone else was okay. That night, I chose myself. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove until the streets emptied, until the world felt small enough to think. When I finally reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and listened to the hum of the refrigerator. Same sound, different woman. I opened the closet and pulled out the metal document box, the one I hadn't touched in years. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, mortgage papers, car titles, loan agreements, bank statements. Proof, not love. Proof. I spread them across the table, one by one. Each document told the same story. My name, my signature, my responsibility. I thought about how carefully I'd signed each page, how I'd told myself, this is what good mothers do. But good mothers aren't erased. I opened my laptop and began making lists. Accounts I funded, payments I guaranteed, assets tied to my name.
No anger. No checking.
Just precision. I called the bank the next morning, then the loan office, then the attorney my hospital used for contracts. Short conversations, professional tone. I didn't explain feelings. I explained facts. My name is on the account. I'd like to remove myself. I need to understand my options. No one argued. The law doesn't care about guilt. By noon, the path was clear. I didn't cancel everything. I corrected it. I set boundaries on paper, where words had failed. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Sterling. You left without saying goodbye. I stared at the screen. Then I locked it. Silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. And decisions change everything. At sunrise, I packed one suitcase. No lists.
No hesitation.
just clothes I actually wore, and the photo of David and me outside that first apartment. I left the rest behind. The apartment door closed softly. No note on the counter.
No goodbye.
I drove while the sky turned pale pink, Ohio fading behind me mile by mile. Cornfields gave way to highways. Highways gave way to water. By the time I crossed into Florida, the air felt different. Salt, warmth. I rented a small place near the coast. Nothing fancy. A place where no one knew my name or my sacrifices. Mornings were quiet. I learned the rhythm of the ocean. Steady, patient, endless. I drank coffee on the balcony and watched the sun rise without anyone asking me for anything. Then I made the calls. Not emotional ones. Efficient ones. I met with an attorney whose hands were steady and voice was calm. We rewrote my will. No drama.
No explanations.
A scholarship fund in my husband's name for nursing students who couldn't afford school. That felt right. Sterling was removed. Not out of spite. Out of truth. Love without respect isn't love. Next, finances. The mortgage? My name was removed. The bank didn't argue. The car? Repossessed. Contracts don't care about family dinners. The accounts I funded were closed or redirected. Everything done legally.
Cleanly.
Each signature felt lighter. Then the last. My phone stayed face down. When I finally turned it over, there were missed calls. Then more. Then texts. Confusion first. Then anger. Then panic. I didn't respond. I never raised my voice once. I didn't need to. Silence said everything. On my first Sunday in Florida, I walked the shoreline barefoot. The water erased my footprints. As fast as I made them. For the first time in decades, nothing followed me. And that's when I understood. Disappearing isn't running away. It's choosing a life where you're no longer used as a resource. I didn't vanish. I finally arrived. The phone exploded. Not all at once. In waves. Missed call. Voicemail. Text. Then another. And another. By the end of the first day, 55 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. The messages followed a pattern. At first, confusion. Mom, where are you? Did something happen? Call me back. Concern wrapped in irritation. Then panic. I can't access the account. The bank says you removed your name. Why is the car gone?
The tone changed. Sharp.
Accusing. What did you do? You can't do this. This is your fault. By nightfall, the rage arrived. You're being dramatic. You embarrassed us. You owe me. I listen once a day. Not out of hope. Out of closure. I let each voicemail play. From beginning to end.
No apologies. No remorse.
Just fear of loss. Fear of inconvenience. When the message ended, I deleted it. Every time. The trash icon became familiar. There was something strange about it.
How easy it felt.
How quiet followed. On the third day, the calls slowed. Anger gave way to bargaining. We'll talk. We'll fix this. You're overreacting. Still no apology. Just strategy. I sat on my balcony, watching pelicans glide over the water, while my phone vibrated beside me. I didn't touch it. For years, I had filled every silence, explained myself, smoothed things over. This time, I let the silence speak. It said, I see clearly now. I choose peace. I am done. By the end of the week, the calls stopped. No grand goodbye. Just absence. And absence, I learned, is sometimes the most honest answer. Silence said everything. Now I wake up to waves. Instead of guilt. No alarms screaming at me. No phones lighting up with demands. Just ocean air. And the sound of water. Moving the way it's meant to. I make my coffee slowly. I drink it while the sun rises. Not because I have time, but because I've finally taken it back. I volunteer at a small clinic nearby. A few hours a week.
No overthink. No martyrdom.
Just care, given freely, not extracted. I walk more. I breathe deeper. I laugh when something's funny, not when it's expected. For most of my life, I was mom.
A role.
A function. Someone useful. Now I'm Joan. A woman with her own mornings. Her own money. Her own silence. I don't wonder anymore.
If he misses me.
That question belongs to another life. I don't replay Thanksgiving. Or the words that broke the spell. They did me a favor. He wanted me quiet. So I got quiet. And in that quiet, I reclaimed everything my silence paid for.
My time.
My dignity. My peace. I didn't destroy a family. I stopped financing my own erasure. Some people think love means sacrifice. Until you disappear. I've learned something better. Love should never cost you yourself. The waves keep moving.
So do I.
And for the first time, my life finally belongs to me. Some people think strength screams. That it has to shout.
Fight.
Prove something.
Nah.
Sometimes strength just walks away. It packs one bag, closes the door softly, and chooses peace over permission. If this story hit you, if any part of it felt uncomfortably familiar, know this. You're not weak for staying too long. You are loyal. You are loving. But you're allowed to stop. When love turns into erasure. If you're still here listening, thank you. It means you understand. The kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. So, if this story spoke to you, take a second, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And tell me something in the comments. Where are you watching from? No matter where you are, no matter what you're carrying, you're not alone. And you never were. If you want next,